Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us. We're just going to give a couple minutes here to let a few people come in, and then we will get started. For those already online, feel free to drop in the chat. Let us know where you're from, what credit union, what city, what state. All right, we'll get started. Looks like we've got somebody in nice sunny weather, and then there's Hank and I. Starting to get a little bit nicer here in Wisconsin and Michigan. Thanks again for joining us today to talk about the best practices for effectively showcasing created impact for your financial institution. We've got some great speakers this afternoon. We've got Tamra from CNote, Director of Impact Evaluation, Kat Berman, co-founder and CEO of CNote, Michelle Christie, Senior Manager, Financial Inclusion and Impact from the National Credit Union Foundation, and Hank Hubbard, President and CEO of One Detroit Credit Union. And a couple things, housekeeping notes to make. We will have a time for questions at the end, so feel free to throw those in the chat as we're going along, and then we'll save some time at the end to go over those. And we will next talk a little bit about what we're going to cover in this afternoon session. Looks like we are going to show what impact investors are looking for and where your impact story fits. 5 keys to sharing your impact story. Credit unions are great about creating impact, doing great things for the community, but not always great about sharing those out and letting people know about all the good things that you're doing. So we'll get some keys to doing that. Storytelling and impact measurement and practice, impact-related resources, and of course the Q&A I mentioned earlier. So at this time, I'm going to pass it over to the amazing Kat Berman to start the session. Kat, you want to take it away?
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jenny. Thank you so much to CUNA and CUNA Strategic Services for helping us co-host today's session on impact reporting and why it matters. So my name is Kat Berman. I am co-founder and CEO of CNote. We are a woman-led social enterprise that gets to work with incredible credit unions across the country on helping deliver that exciting story and drive new visibility and capital for awesome credit unions. I wanted to talk a little bit high level in terms of why. I'm so grateful that each of you, having such busy schedules, spent some time with us today to hear about this. And so I wanted to open it up with why even think about spending time on impact reporting or telling the stories behind the impact. As Jenny shared beautifully, we know that you're already on the front line doing this work. We know that you're already thinking about your community and delivering quality financial services and opportunity and financial well-being for your members and for your community. And so what about the reporting or about the stories really matters? And so I wanted to share kind of 4 key points or 4 key things we think about at CNote of why this really matters. You know, first I'd say in terms of really being able to capture your impact, being able to report on the good you're doing matters to your team members, matters to your employees, right? So just even thinking internally about the folks who come to work with you every day and them really having pride. There's already a lot of incredible pride in terms of getting to work in this movement. And so being able to showcase really the good that you're doing can be a wonderful motivator. And in this really tight labor market, a really wonderful retention vehicle, retention of your current team members, but also the attraction of new team members. We know in the movement, you know, certainly we're all looking for talent and wanting to bring more folks onto our team. So being able to articulate the true impact we're doing at our credit union and for our community, I think is a real opportunity to engage your current employees and future team members as well. The second reason we think it matters is externally. In this competitive market, how do we get folks knowing that you're different, that your credit union actually really does stand for community and for financial well-being and has for years? And so telling that story, sharing those metrics, I think allows you to differentiate yourselves from some of the other deposit institutions that folks may want to join or may want to go to. So it could absolutely be a differentiator and a driver of growth for you as it relates to new members and membership growth. Third is just being able to lean in more. So many of the credit unions we work with say, I'm doing great work and I want to do even more. And so understanding where you started, where you're starting from, benchmarking that impact or having some of those stories to share really allows our credit union partners to understand not just where they're starting from, but how could they even lean in and do more. And then lastly, opportunity for new growth and visibility. And we'll talk a little bit about that in the subsequent part of this session today. But we're excited at CNote to talk about this group or this new ecosystem of impact investors who are looking to place money in incredible institutions like credit unions. And so how do we think about driving new visibility and new capital your way and being able to take advantage of those new opportunities because of the work you're already doing? The real kind of, golden way to do that is being able to articulate and share out your impact in a really thoughtful, authentic and meaningful way with external potential investors, potential stakeholders. So those are the 4 reasons we think that this is worth doing, worth exploring, worth looking into as really trying to deepen how you think about telling your impact story and evaluating the impact you do. I'll just also share briefly, why do impact investors matter to credit unions? What we're seeing, and I should say at CNote, we work with a host of different impact investors from very large public companies like some of these logos you see here, Netflix, Apple, Patagonia, to family offices, to local foundations. Those are all kind of the impact investors that we get to work with. And they are looking to partner with wonderful financial institutions that truly care about their community. And so we are very bullish in terms of trying to make that direct connection to credit unions. And so we think with that successful connection brings several opportunities for credit unions. I think one, it definitely brings the visibility of the great work you're already doing. So really making sure that that foundation down the street or that large public company knows that you are doing that great work and making you very visible. I think second is definitely access to capital. How do those impact investors help really fuel your growth in the way that makes sense to you? And whether that comes in through deposits, through secondary capital, through great partners like Inclusive, or through philanthropic dollars, right? Really allowing those impact investors to step in and support you and your growth strategy in a meaningful way because of the great work you do. And then, of course, long-term partnership. At the end of the day, we really want to see these impact investors embrace you as a long-term partner. And so opportunities for you to have new membership through their employees, opportunities for you to partner on in terms of diversity procurement and new vendor relationships. And so we see a lot of different ways that these impact investors can play a really strategic and support role as we think about your growth and your future success for your organization. And then lastly, I'll just say one of the things I know we are committed to, and I think all of the partners on the call are committed to today, is making sure that this appetite for social justice, this appetite for economic justice continues to be a movement, not a moment. And how do we make sure that the incredible movement of credit unions is a staple and a foundation of the future of economic justice, not just a 2022 press release or campaign? And so we think with this group of impact investors, we're at a historic moment to really get them engaged and really get them understanding the power of credit unions and really moving forward to partner with you in a variety of helpful ways. So with that, let me pass it to the next great group of investors, and I'll let Tamra and Hank take it from here.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kat. I'm really excited to have this opportunity to share with folks. As you heard, my name is Tamra Thetford. I'm the Director of Impact Evaluation with CNote. And, wanted to share some best practices that we certainly see in the impact measurement and management space, but also really, learn from working with credit unions across our network on how to identify their impact, share it out, and measure it. I think the first place to start is really to emphasize that, the key to telling your impact story is being able to communicate why your work matters. We know that folks are doing such impactful work in their communities. It's happening every day. As we heard a little bit earlier, sometimes the hard part, right, is just the communication. And I think it's worth, just putting out on the table from the beginning that this work of articulating and sharing out your impact, it is work that requires sometimes a little more reflective opportunity, right? A time to sit back and think through the types of impact that you're actually having in your community. And that can be at odds with what hits you when you start your day, problem solving, making sure your institution is financially healthy, serving your members, right? And so what we're trying to do is make sure that you're equipped with really practical and kind of bite-sized tools so that any amount of time you're able to carve out to focus on your impact, you can make the most of. And I think, the easiest place to start is by asking yourself some questions, asking your institution some questions that help you get at, what we call intended impact, which just literally means being able to identify the change that you're trying to make in your community, or the things that you're trying to improve for your members, or the problems that you're trying to solve. And a part of that is then being able to identify what are those needs that you're serving that aren't being met elsewhere, right? Which is something that Kat referred to, something that your institution is doing that somebody down the street isn't and is really worth elevating. And those pieces help you really be able to identify why you do things differently and why that really matters, what that turns into in terms of impact at your member level and at the community level and potentially at your institutional level. And so starting with this intended impact really can help, I think, lay a foundation for the data then that will help support and help you evaluate if you're having the impact that you think you're having. And it also is a really key starting point for being able to share externally and to use this information internally for continuous improvement and to identify if there's ways to grow or strengthen your efforts. And so one of the things that we've put together that I think is kind of a useful way to help you walk through the pieces of your impact is just a series of 5 categories of really simple, kind of questions. And I'm going to walk through these a little quickly. I'm going to give you one example of how this could play out. And then I really want to move to bring Hank into the conversation so we can hear how, impact storytelling and measurement actually is playing out at an institution working on this. But in terms of these kind of categories to help organize us, I think one of the really basic places to start is being able to define who you are as a credit union, as a financial institution. And this can be kind of things that help shorthand the kind of impact that you're having in your community. So for example, any designations you have, like as a low income designated credit union or a CDFI or a minority depository institution. Again, just, something that kind of shorthands the conversation about the institution that you are. And that leads into the second category around who it is you're serving. You have your members, your potential members, you're certainly serving a whole swath of the community, but there may be particular groups or different characteristics of people or geographies that you've really developed a specialty in being able to serve, right? So that could be people with low or no credit scores. It could be low income, people that live in low income census tracts. maybe it's immigrants. There are a whole series of, different folks who are presenting with needs that require sometimes specialized solutions. So these groups, you're serving a wide swath of folks, but this is a way to tease out some groups with particular characteristics that you've developed kind of some specialty around, which really leads into 3 and 4, where then you can plug in, so how are you serving your members that are presenting with particular characteristics or situations or needs? What products and services are you offering that help meet their needs? And category 4 helps us understand, and how are you doing that in a way that sets your institution really apart and helps you be very responsive to your members and the challenges that they may be presenting with. So you may offer auto loans, and so does the institution down the street. What about the loans that you offer helps you really meet the needs of your members? And Hank's got a really great example he'll be walking us through in just a second. And all of these pieces fit together to then help explain, why does all of this work matter? What is the context, the greater context in your community, or that you're connected to, that your work helps serve, helps solve, both in a short-term manner as well as a long-term manner. And this could be themes like financial inclusion. It could be climate change. It could be reducing the wealth gap. The string of pieces all fit together then for being able to explain how your work and your service and your products that you're providing to your members are helping address these particular issues that we see showing up in our country and in our communities. And so I just want to walk through kind of a brief example here so you can see this, in practice a little bit, hypothetical here. We have an example of a low-income designated credit union, and they certainly have a full field of membership, but a chunk of their members have either a low or a no credit score. And some of the products and services that they've identified to really meet the needs of these individuals are financial education and credit building products. And in addition to those two pieces, they can also point to the fact that they have alternative underwriting criteria as part of the way that they do their lending that allows for folks without a credit score to access loans. And perhaps this is an institution that is able to make loans to folks that have an ITIN and do not have a social security number. Those are really pieces that could help set this institution apart that the financial institution down the street may not offer, right? And is really helping the credit union be as responsive to the needs of their members as possible. And ideally, all of these pieces fit together so that you're able to tell a story about that you're really able to help your members establish and build their credit, avoid payday and title lenders, and qualify for safe and affordable loan products through your credit union. And all of those pieces lead to financial inclusion long-term, as well as wealth building. That's just one example to kind of guide through these categories that are kind of quick things that you can do to think about your institution and which pieces help best tell your impact story. So I do want to go ahead and turn to Hank and bring him into the conversation so we can bring some of this, alive and really grounded in actual practice. I'll encourage folks to put any questions that they have into the questions tab because we'll make sure we have time for that as we move forward. But Hank, I'd love to just, bring you in, have you talk to us about what you're learning about impact, both the storytelling and the measurement, because I think you've done really great work in both areas. And was hoping you could just start by introducing yourself, and we can use the framework we just looked at. Maybe tell us who is One Detroit and who do you serve as a way to start our conversation.
Well, thank you. I'm Hank Hubbard. I'm the president of One Detroit Credit Union. And Tamra is awfully generous in saying that I'm good at this stuff. I will let you know at the outset that I don't feel like I'm good at it. So, you know, we can go from there, but I have been working on it for a long time. And one of the exciting things about working with CNote is that they're helping me get better at defining my message. So One Detroit, we were chartered in 1935 for the newspaper industry. About 20 years ago, we pivoted to focusing on the people that live and work in Detroit. And so Detroit is the largest majority Black city in the US. And we have the designations, all of the designations Tamra was talking about: low income, minority depository institution, CDFI. And so we're definitely very focused on that. Let's see, Detroit is 80% Black, 33% in poverty, and that reflects our members quite well. Less than 25% of our borrowers are A and B credit. So that sort of tells you what we do. We're full service, and we have all of the sort of normal products and services a community bank would do that focuses on consumers, or a mainstream credit union. But then we have a number of specialty products too.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks, Hank. Well, and so to get us into some of the work that you have done already that I do think is really, really amazing and presents all the points that, I touched on earlier about how you serve your members differently. And so and why that matters. And so that's where I wanted to pick up the next question. Can you share a little bit about your Refi My Ride product with us?
Yeah, I would love to. It's kind of a flagship product for us. And when we were designing it, we were looking at our membership and looking at the pain points that they have. And one of the biggest ones was people stuck in high rate car loans, but their loan to value was too high for anybody, even us, with our current policies, to even look at refinancing. So we created this product called Refi My Ride, where we cut the rate in half. We leave the term the same. And we decided not to worry too much about loan to value. And we regularly go to 120. And with exceptions, we've gone as high as 140 loan to value on that. Because otherwise, they just don't have any escape from that. And that's really worked out pretty well for us. And we designed the product specifically for that. So it's been very successful. We end up saving people about $60 a month, an average. And we about $3,000, $3,500 over the life of the loan. So we've done about 30 million of these, $30 million worth of these, and it's saved our members $5.25 million in interest. So it's like almost a 20% return just on impact alone, which is really amazing.
Yeah, I was going to say it's so striking. And I think, I shared this slide that kind of summarizes some of the overview of the product and, some of the stats that you were sharing. And, for me, I think there were kind of two things. One, I think it's really striking calling out the features of the product, right? Rather than just saying, hey, we did this many, of Refi My Ride loans, really being able to drill into what sets this loan apart, I think is, something I would underscore. And then I wondered if you could talk to us a little bit about how because all of these data points were data points that, you had already identified, how had you figured out what data would best support, telling the story around this product and the impact that it was having with your members?
Well, the thing that was important to me was to help our members spend less on their cars. And so that was the first thing that I looked at. Also, it was easy to gauge the impact on this, unlike a lot of our other products, because we knew what they were paying before, and we were able to compare with what we had. So I can tell you without any hesitancy that we save about an average of $60 a month, because I know what they were paying before. I know what they pay now. And it's kind of an easy thing. I think I tend to complicate things. So having done this product for so long, I've tried to figure out how the easy thing. So amount saved per month, amount saved over the life of the loan. Of course, we count, and we look at the credit scores. Our average credit score for this product is about 610. So I'm able to show anybody who's interested that half of these things are below 600, which is pretty breathtaking for a lot of people. So that's sort of where I focused. We looked at how much we lent out, just because, for reporting to our board and loan losses and things like that. But when I'm trying to talk about it to people, potential members, I talk about the savings. When I try to talk to people that like social investors that I would like to put a deposit in the credit union, I talk about the larger, over the life of the loan, we're saving $250,000 or $500,000.
Yeah, that's great. Well, and I appreciate that point that you're making too about the audience for the impact, storytelling and sharing really makes a difference. What kind of our measures are going to resonate. And I guess, so that's kind of my next question. I know you and I have been working together on kind of pulling together pieces related to telling it, One Detroit's impact story overall. And I, just wonder if there's anything you wanted to share or highlight that, you've learned about how to pull, not just a piece focused on a product, but pulling these pieces all together to really share One Detroit's holistic impact.
Well, I think you hit on it pretty well in your introduction. When I saw what you were going to say, I'm like, hey, I was pretty close, because I've just come to know CNote this year, and I've been thankful for what we've done together. But I've been working on this. I've been trying to figure out how to share our impact, and the format that you put it in, using those steps made it so much easier, because I'd been thinking about it already. But if you put it in those steps, it's really helpful. We do have those designations, but I didn't know where to talk about them and things like that. I'm not sure if that's what you're asking me, but that's kind of, you've helped me organize this mass of data that I call my head a crock pot sometimes, and I'm throwing data in there, but it's all mixed up. So.
That's really great. Well, and I guess, so one of my next questions is, Kat was talking at the beginning about, why kind of the case for impact measurement, right? And why this data is so important. And, we've been talking a lot about external sharing. I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about the ways in which you feel like impact data is useful to you internally, and to what extent it plays into evaluating your short or long-term success, or, any measures around growth and sustainability.
Yeah. So internally, I think, and I think it's true for many credit unions, one of the best compensations for what I do is going home every day and knowing that I made a difference in somebody's life. And so, or a lot of somebody's, for example, so I think it's really important to articulate that regularly to the board so that they understand what's happening, and especially to your team. And it's harder during COVID because we're really not getting together personally like we used to. But we're trying to tell, somebody's trying to tell how they helped a member every time we have a team meeting. So we're talking about it a lot. And, gearing the information to team members, that makes them proud of the work that they're doing. But then B, it's also helping them learn how to talk about the products to members when they come in and have an opportunity to ask questions or whatever.
Yeah, that's really great. I actually would love to hear a little more about how you find ways to share this impact, the stories and the data internally. You talked a little bit about, I guess that's quasi-internal with your board, but certainly talking about it with your staff and kind of, one thing that I often see as a challenge in the industry is making the data mean something to the people that have a key hand in collecting it, right? That being a real challenge. And it sounds like, you're finding a way to connect the data to the meaning. I just wonder if you could speak a little more about some of the ways you've done that.
Well, it is a challenge. I'll say that first, because my credit union people, but I've also seen it with other credit unions that I know. We do good things because it's the right thing to do, but we don't talk about them as much because we don't really want the spotlight on us. Most credit union people are very modest, right? And so it's difficult to get the information, and sometimes it's like pulling teeth for my team, because I'll say, so tell me an impact story, and nobody has one. I'm like, so you didn't save anybody any money this month? You didn't, and of course they did, but they do it every day, and to stop and write it down is difficult for them, and it's an extra friction kind of, which you just have to keep working on that. But they love to hear the stories. So it's those things. But when I get a good story and I get all the details, I love to share it with both them. I'll put it out in the media if it's worth it, and we have, in our credit union, we have what we call a bragging wall, where anytime we're mentioned in the news or anything, we put it up on the wall. And our team actually, walking by, they'll stop and read those things. So that helps a lot too.
That's awesome. So I think one question that's coming up for me is thinking just still on this different audiences and different messages. One thing I think I've also heard as sometimes tension is an institution that struggles with maybe some of the data points that we've touched on here that might work for an external audience or the board or an impact investor, and they feel like it wouldn't resonate with their members themselves. Can you talk a little bit about that and, how you've navigated what, if any, data you share back with members, either existing members or as part of a strategy to, expand and recruit additional members?
Yeah, well, that's definitely true, that you have to gear your message toward your audience. You have to be thinking about that before you put it out. So, for example, I wouldn't want to say to my members that 30% of our borrowers are considered low income, or something like that. I got this great report from Inclusive on our loan portfolio, and it tells me all of these great things. Unfortunately, I can't remember the numbers in my head all the time. But I can use that report to come up with information. So I would tell a social investor that, say, 35% of our borrowers were from very low income census tracts. I would do that, but I wouldn't put that out on our website because I don't want us to become known as the poor people's bank. And we have actually had members tell us, oh, well, you're the poor people's bank and I've graduated now and I'm, going off to Chase or something like that. We don't want them to think that way. And so I'm really pretty careful about that. You don't want to offend your members, saying, hey, and I also don't want to sound like no credit, no problem. That's not, those are slogans for predatory services, and we don't want to be put in that box. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, no, that's really helpful in terms of how you navigate some of those messages. I think those are great examples. So maybe one final question, and then we'll move to some resources and Q&A. Can you talk a little bit about, I guess there's no end state for impact, measurement and reporting, but can you talk about your vision of where you'd like impact reporting to be within One Detroit?
Well, it's definitely true that there's not an end and not an end. And I have seen other credit unions put out a formal impact statement, like a report, which is really impressive to me. I don't feel like we have the resources to do that. And as you've heard, I struggle with how to articulate our impact in a way that would be appropriate for a report like that. But I think ideally, if we had an impact report like that, that would be pretty cool. And that could be, I think that we could do our statistics in a more general way without offending anybody, but letting them know that their credit union is here for everybody. I mean, when we say we're One Detroit, we're saying everybody is One Detroit, and that specifically includes people that are poor, people that have poor credit. Yeah, we're all together on this. So I guess that's where I would go if I could have something, and then put it out every year because it's going to change every year. So
yeah, that's wonderful. Awesome.
I love the little sort of one-page things that you and I have been working on. You put that's still up there. That tries to encapsulate it in a something that's easily digestible. I tend to put too much information in there, so you've gotten rid of my clutter.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for that. And let's see. I think we wanted to take just a minute, couple of minutes to share some resources. Let me check. Is Michelle Christie with us? Yeah. I'm sorry. I saw her earlier, and I'm just seeing if she is still online. Okay. It looks like she lost internet momentarily. So we're going to give it just a second to get her back online. I'm going to introduce her, and then if she's not back, we can move things around. Michelle Christie was with us, and hopefully is joining us again in just a second. She's the Senior Manager for Financial Inclusion and Impact at the National Credit Union Foundation. And I know, wonderful, Michelle was able to rejoin us just in the nick of time. She was kind enough to put together a whole set of resources that can be really helpful to credit unions, working on impact sharing and measurement. And so, Michelle, I'll turn it over to you to talk us through these resources.
Thank you, Tamra. I lost connection like twice, and I'm like, no. But hello and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. Again, Michelle Christie with National Credit Union Foundation, really talking and doing all things financial well-being for all, which is a really more than a hot topic. I think Kat, you mentioned that before, just making sure that we're keeping economic impact and justice at the top of mind, not just necessarily for a moment. So the links that you see there, I'll just chit chat about some of those really quickly, if that's all right. When I'm sharing some statistics, I think that are not on that page, obviously, but that come from some of these resources. One of those being that 61% of all new credit union membership growth that comes from multicultural consumers. That's super important when we're thinking about, all that's happened recently, how to connect with members that perhaps have been underserved or we're unsure of how to reach them. I think that's an important note to keep in mind, regardless of where you are necessarily in the country. I would consider maybe another resource that's not added, but reaching out to see what organizations, and one is CUNA Mutual, who can help you with some of those services, whether you're looking for training or one-on-ones, kind of consulting, and also, like webinars, etc., on how to kind of move that needle in regards to offering the services or kind of knowing who you serve. I think that's huge. A quick note, quick plug, a little bit about what I do is the grant management at the foundation. And one of our recent grants that's underway is about just that, knowing your membership. And sometimes that starts with your employees. So I'll jump really quickly over to some CUNA trainings and events, because one thing I think is really important when it comes to financial inclusion, financial well-being, that of your members and your employees, continuing to train, continuing the work to train and get your staff and team on the same page, let alone the same mission, right, of making financial well-being for all the mission. And with that, I know for sure that CUNA offers trainings and bundles on things like, you name it, compliance, HR, even like tech things, lending, marketing, even like all of these things. And so if there's something that you're
looks like Michelle might have frozen. Let's give her just a second. And I know we'll be sharing the slides after the webinar. So absolute worst case scenario, we have all of the links here that we'll be able to provide. I'm going to give it just a couple more seconds, and then maybe I'll actually, let me just jump over to our chat and see some questions so we can tee those up. Okay, well, why don't we go ahead and we'll jump into the Q&A, and then we can come back to Michelle when she's able to rejoin us. So we got a lot of good questions in here, and I'm just going to start. Actually, here's one that I think, looks like Michelle might be back.
Forgive me. I'm sorry. I'm like, but it's sunshine. I'm calling from Tampa, Florida, and it's gorgeous out. I've been on my computer for 6 hours straight at the very least, but my apologies. Did you want to continue, Tamra? I'm so sorry.
Yeah, that'd be great. I was gonna say, why don't you go ahead and keep going?
Goodness gracious. And like the worst, right? When it's online and live, because I don't know where my face did pause, but my apologies to everyone who had to see that. I believe I left off on some of the trainings that CUNA offers. Is that right? Is that the last?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. So I'll move on from there, just in the thoughts of time, to talk about some products and services. Now, this is more so from CUNA Strategic Solutions, which is awesome because there's more than products and services and those resources when it comes to that, right? There's also another statistic and quote that I'd like to note, because CUNA, the strategic services, they also offer, let me say, like webinars, case studies, white papers, articles. Like there's more than just products and services. But I found this to be very interesting. And it's an article, or comes from an article by QCash, which is titled "The Power of Financial Inclusion." Now, we all have heard and know a little bit about this, or even a taste of this, but according to the Pew Research Center, half of lower income Americans have reported job or wage loss between 2020 and 2021. Now, those stats can range, from God knows where, but I just want to circle back on the importance of knowing your membership, knowing who you serve, knowing how to serve, and being empathetic towards what the people that you serve may be going through. And I say that to preface, all of those resources are offered by CUNA Strategic Solutions. However, or in addition to, when it comes to empathy, when it comes to knowing your membership, understanding them, meeting them where they are, it's, again, more than products, services, trainings, right? That's all super essential. But one thing that we offer, a couple things that we offer at the foundation, are ways to introduce that to your teams and staff. Now, you may be a graduate or familiar or have heard of one of our signature programs, Development Educators Program. Is anyone a graduate of that, perhaps? If not, no worries. This is something that we offer a few times a year, with the next 2 sessions being offered in September, November. And what's focused in this training, where I should note people come from across the nation, across the globe, really, to gather to understand and kind of dig deeper into the why. Like, why are credit unions different? How can we introduce thoughts on development issues? And even in our backyard, again, back with the emotional intelligence and empathy training, that is all involved in that. And that's about a week-long program or training, but well worth it to change, perspectives or help and it's not just for, C-suite or board members, literally anyone and everyone is absolutely welcome. And a mini version of that, if you can't bring everyone, which you don't have to at the same time, would be like exploring why, like a workshop to either do virtually or bring to your credit union or your organization, because all of those are super duper important and kind of the sphere of how we, did I lose anyone? So sorry. The sphere of how we do and why we do the work. Another note is that we came from, and nice to see you again, Tamra, is Youth and Health, right? So that's one of our biggest events in the year, as well as the foundation dinner. So those are 2 opportunities to continue those conversations. Again, leaving titles at the door to drill down into those issues, at least for Youth and Health, and kind of understand how to leverage the people and ideas in the room to make the impacts for where we serve when we're not back in a conference zone. But just one last thing I'd like to share with you all is that the foundation hosts that dinner, but also has another way to engage, and that's through the Herb Wegner Awards. So those are memorial awards given to individuals or organizations that are doing this work every day. Applications are open, nominations are open, and they close on July 29th. So if you know someone or an organization who is a change maker in the credit union movement or an innovator in the credit union movement, that's what we want to hear. You all mentioned that we're great at telling stories. I want you to share yours, right? That's how we learn from each other. That's how we do the great works. I think that's about it for resources. I did add a few from Inclusive. Speaking of impact reports, I know that was just mentioned, but there's a finance report as well. The foundation just launched their impact report from 2021. I found both of those to be helpful, not only because I'm back new to the credit union space as of like 5-6 months ago, but because I'm a data nerd. I like to know, and data is how we are going to continue to tell the story. It's where the words and the work meet. So how can we really show and prove the impact that credit unions make, because we do that every single day. So I so appreciate you all allowing me to gab and come in and out with connectivity, but I hope that was helpful, and I'm here, and I believe my contact info is available as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for pulling all of those together. And like I mentioned, we'll make sure to send the slides out afterwards, which have those links. So those resources will be available to everyone. And with that, I think we're going to go ahead and turn to the Q&A. Like I said, I was just looking at some of the questions that had come in. And Kat, I think this one might be a good one to start with for you. Question is, what type of impact do corporations / institutional investors really want to see?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm going to sound like an accountant when I say it depends. As you can imagine, a lot of corporations like to differentiate themselves along their corporate values. So we work with some corporations who are very invested in BIPOC communities, other corporations who really want to make a difference in low to moderate income communities, others who are really leaning into environmental justice. So it certainly is, it depends. I think the good news is, there's so much that credit unions are already doing that I think corporations can support. Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, now we can hear you. You're back.
Right, got it. Michelle and I are having the internet woes today. But what I was saying is, I think the good news is so many of the incredible credit unions that we work with and that I'm seeing on today's call are already doing the work. And so my first message is, I think the important thing here is to connect you to those organizations who want to support what you're already doing, as opposed to what I've seen happen over the years is we run around trying to please the investor and we ended up doing scope creep, right? And it adds more work to the team, more homework. And again, credit unions are working hard enough already. And so what we really try to do is support this notion of how do we get you in front of the impact investors that want to support what you're already doing. And like I said, there are a lot of investors who care deeply about economic justice, who care deeply about financial well-being, who care deeply about serving underestimated communities and underserved communities. And so I do think there is more than enough interest in what credit unions are already doing from a impact investor lens. But like I said, in answer to the question, if you ask them, if you sit down and say, what do you care about? It really does depend on the corporation, but a very large group of them do care about economic justice and the racial wealth gap.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much for that. Let's see. I think maybe the next question that actually kind of dovetails with that is, we got a question, this impact talk is all well and good, especially for larger credit unions, but I'm a small credit union. What are some steps you would recommend for an institution like ours? And let's see, Hank, do you want to maybe speak to that first and then I can chime in?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to. So we're small. I mean, I guess, on the whole range of things, you might think we're small or might think we're big, but we are small. And I started working on trying to figure out our impact when I was hoping to get individuals that I knew that were socially interested in investing, and other credit unions who love what we do, but really kind of need to have some documentation. So that's kind of where I started. How do I tell the story? Also, you can practice by applying for awards, because you have to explain your impact when you're doing award or Herb Wegner nominations, for example. But so as CDFI fund grants, those are the uses that I went backwards for, to try and figure out how to articulate our impact. And so I don't know if that answers the question, Tamra, but that's what I was thinking about.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. And I wonder, Michelle, is this a question that you would love to chime in on?
Absolutely. I know that most of the conversation, or some of the conversation, is focused on investing. And so I'll just take it from the point of financial well-being for all. And that I know that it is being talked about literally everywhere, and a lot of big credit unions are having that talk, and it's seemingly making a big impact. Yes, I want to say, and I want to empower every small credit union, every individual at a credit union, to know that you absolutely can make this difference, and you likely do it every single day. Because the dollars may not be behind it just yet, does not mean that we can't pour right into, again, making financial well-being for all the mission in what you do. Because again, this is every day, and I know that it's well good. I worked in a credit union also. I can tell you by fact that this happens whether you know it or not. So dig deep, find your stories, connect with your people, perhaps even turning to the folks who see your members every single day and find out what, not only what the member needs or what those issues are that are being brought, you need the employee, and find that middle ground, create that middle ground, bring those people to the table for a middle ground. I'm a serial includer. Oops, sorry. But it makes all the difference, because then the meeting of the minds happens and we can actually see that impact, that improvement start from there.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And actually, so one thing I would add to chime in here that, I do think this process of identifying your intended impact is a great place to start. And exactly what Michelle is saying, and some of the examples that Hank gave, these are conversations that you can do very informally. You can do them in bite-sized pieces across your institution, because the impact that you think you're having, maybe in conversations with the board or at the executive level, when you're talking to your frontline staff, your folks that are interacting directly with your members, you may get some different nuance on the impact that you are having, and maybe some that you think you are, and it's not quite, working out the way you expect. And so honestly, just that process of really being able to articulate your impact can pull in such valuable information that then the data, absolutely can be pulled together to help you dig a little deeper, to support the good work that you're doing, and to find opportunities, to continue to improve. So I think that is a really wonderful point.
I very much agree with that. And I think for me, collecting the information and, it was not very organized, and I was just collecting it. And the more information I would collect, I'd go off in different things. And you realize as you're doing that there are a lot of ways you can use this data. We talked about some of them. Another one that came to mind while we were talking is political advocacy. The data really tells the story for people that, politicians definitely, and investors, and people that you're trying to convince, that explain that you're doing good work, and put your data where your mouth is. It's important.
Yeah, I think that's really great. Well, I'm just looking at the questions and the time, and I think we have time for probably one more. So there's another question kind of from this perspective as a small credit union. So Hank, your perspectives will be really helpful, as well as Michelle and Jenny. Anyone feel free to chime in. I do my best to wear the impact hat. Who are some folks I should be connecting with that can really help me on this journey, so I'm not doing it alone?
So for me, if as a member of Inclusive, I end up being around a bunch of other credit unions that are very impact oriented, more than a mainstream credit union. And so those are your peeps, those are the people that are trying to do the same thing. And it just depends on where you are. People that I look at, there's St. Louis Community Credit Union in St. Louis just does an awesome job at talking about their impact, and I love them. And Freedom First, I think, in Roanoke, Virginia, they put out an impact report that I love. So, but the smaller ones are trying to do it too. And when you're talking to Inclusive, they're trying to help you frame things in terms of impact too, because they're trying to teach you how to do CDFI applications and make those things compelling. So that's where I would look.
Yeah,
or you can call me.
That's awesome. And I was going to say, and contact information has been shared in the chat, so that is definitely a good option. Michelle or Jenny, any last words on this question?
I think Hank put it really well. As far as wearing that hat, that impact hat, wear it proudly, right? And connect with the people in your community who you may already be doing this work with. I'm referring to like community organizations. They have impact reports as well. And what you might not know is you and the work that you do and the work that your folks do are probably in their report. So perhaps collaborate there or on the city or county level to share and use those platforms to share what you're doing and continue to, perpetuate that, and it'll explode from where you are to those you serve, and likely outside of where you think you serve. So you may be getting some good hits from just doing that.
That's wonderful. And
I'll just add, obviously, CNote is a good resource. We've been talking to them about what they do. They help with the impact reporting as well as connecting you to the right people to fund you through deposits. And another good one I would say that I was just thinking about, sorry for that, is the CU awareness, because they do have a lot of those stories of what credit unions are doing well out there. So those are some credit unions that are making some good impact and able to share out what they're doing. So those might be some good resources as well.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. And I'm just looking at the time, so I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up. We've got our contact information on this slide as well as in the chat. I want to say thank you to all of our participants for your attention and all the really great questions. I think it's been an amazing conversation. And certainly thank you to our presenters and to Jenny and CUNA for co-hosting with us. We really are so appreciative of everyone's time and talent, and look forward to being able to share out the recording and the slides with the rest of the field. So thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye.